This is the Tech Phantom, and welcome to episode 7 of the Chronicles of Conan and Lordran. Conan had been told by the Wizard of the Mounds that he needed to solve the devious puzzles and find his way through the labyrinth known as Sans Fortress. It was truly a dangerous place, and myth had it that only one very brave Black Knight had been able to make it all the way through Sans Fortress and find the exit, the path leading to mythical Anor Londo, the city of the gods. Conan felt like he was up to the challenge. Or so he thought. Lately, his strength had been returning to him, although his agility, his dexterity, and his constitution were still not what they were back in the Hyborian lands. The travel to Lordran had taken a toll on his constitution, and he still didn't have all of the vitality that he was used to. Sans Fortress was indeed a very dangerous place. His first attempt was miserable and unsuccessful, but he had learned how to tackle these man serpents. These serpent guards were incredibly strong and rangy, and they had a very, very powerful weapon, the man serpent sword. It had a similar moveset as a great sword as his beloved claymore, but in the hands of the strong man serpents, it was truly a powerful and dangerous weapon. Even more dangerous was the drop to the swampy basement that was guarded by prowling demons. These terrifying monsters were missing their left leg and part of their head. But because they were magical creatures, they could still sense where you were and slither their way to you. They tried to close the distance between themselves and their enemy with jumping attacks. And they also carried magical weapons that channeled lightning that came from their horns. They were some of the strongest and most dangerous foes that Conan had ever seen, and he was disappointed that he wasn't strong enough at this point to take them on. He eventually found a ladder leading up to a hidden terrace. In this terrace, he saw a giant. Normally, these creatures were tender and childlike, not very intelligent. However, that evil that is Tulsa Doom, who is known as Lord Wind in Lordran, had taken advantage of the giants and their childlike intelligence. He had actually enslaved this one, chained him to a wall in perpetuity, and taught him to open up, to yank on the giant chain, which would open the door to Sans Fortress when the giant heard the second bell of awakening being rung. Conan felt very badly about how these giants were being exploited by Lord Wen. It was another reason to kill him, to kill Tulsa Doom. Conan continued forth, fighting man serpents in a very narrow pathway. A false move would lead to his death. The drop was very, very long, and he could either drop into a den of prowling demons or a den of serpent mages. He found another walkway that he had to navigate. There were swinging pendulums, floor traps, and serpent mages waiting to kite him and prevent him from passing forth. Outside of Sen's fortress, there was also a ramp with a well-worn groove where giants dropped boulders, attempting to crush anyone that tried to proceed forward. This place was filled with man-serpents and serpent mages. The mages were not only very strong and knowledgeable in the magical arts, but they also carried with them a sword with incredibly sharp edges that could tear the skin off your bones very, very quickly and inflict deep bleeding wounds. The place was also infested with mimics. These creatures disguised themselves as treasure chests, and when the brave warrior tried to loot them, they came to life and immediately attacked and tried to eat him to death. Thankfully, the wizard had warned Conan about these mimics. He had also told him about the secret door that was outside of the mimic area, where Conan found the covetous ring. This ring would allow him to loot more easily, and for a barbarian who was at heart a thief, since that had been Conan's initial profession, this was an invaluable item which will allow him to find goodies and find loot more easily. The Wizard of the Mountains had asked Conan for a favor. Trapped inside a Sen's fortress, there was a magician friend of the Wizard of the Mountain called Big Hat Logan. Logan was a strange fellow, a powerful magician indeed, but a little bit like an absent-minded professor. He had fallen asleep while trying to traverse through Sen's fortress, and had been captured by the man-serpents and put in a cage until they determine his fate. Conan found the area where the prisoners were kept and found Big Hat Logan.
You seem quite easy. A rare thing in these times. I am Logan. I'm a bit cooped up, as you can see. I have a bright idea. Suppose you set me free. I'm old and empty-handed, but I could repay you with knowledge and sorcery. This place is not in my mind. The inactivity is repressive.
Conan took pity on Big Hat and used the master key to free him.
Oh, heavens. Thank you. I'm safe, and I'm now to resume my travels. But I must log a few things first, and I owe you a favor. I will return to Farling Shrine. Speak with me there, so that I may impart my sorcery.
It was easy to see where Logan got his nickname. He wore a ridiculously large black hat. It obscured his features and helped them become and helped them avoid people. Conan was quite reclusive and only cared about studies and spells. Conan needed to find a way forward and up to Sen's fortress. He passed by the area where the mimic had been. The mimic dropped a lightning spear. A good weapon. Not as good as a claymore, obviously, but a good weapon nonetheless. Conan smiled when he saw the lightning spear, and he immediately thought of Zula and Queen Jenna. Zula had been a good warrior companion during one of Conan's greatest adventures when he killed Daggett. Conan had freed Zula from captivity. Zula used the sharpened staff to fight. Queen Jenna wanted to learn how to fight like Zula because he thought that would make her more attractive to Conan, since Conan showed appreciation for Zula's combat skills. Zula had initially taken to teach Queen Jenna how to use the staff, the sharpened staff, which was essentially a spear. Conan remembered telling Jenna that she shouldn't use the spear, that she should actually use something else. He remembers telling her, Jenna, if you are going to learn how to fight, then learn with a real weapon. Like this, my claymore. Not with a toothpick. And it was true. To Conan, the spear was nothing but a toothpick. As he reminisced about Zula and Queen Jenna, Conan was run through by the pendulums. Now he was truly enraged. But he quickly calmed down. He realized that in this place, he needed to stop reminiscing and needed to start focusing and paying attention. This place was no child's game. It was quite dangerous and deadly. He recovered his souls and found a hidden bonfire. No more warm thoughts about Jenna and Zula, he thought. He had been able to kill the serpents. I have turned their skins into scabbards. He had looted quite a number of souls. It was time to continue regaining his strength. He almost felt like he had regained 100% of his strength. Just a little bit more. Time to move forward. He had gained access to the upper levels of Sense Fortress. He heard loud explosions and loud noises. He decided to try the right path first, which was guarded by a heavy knight. These knights had very strong maces, very strong weapons, and a giant tower shield. However, even armor foes were starting to become easier to kill and deal with as Conan regained his strength. More difficult to deal with, though, was Undead Prince Ricard. He also had armor, but he had a very, very sharp and fast rapier with him. Conan looked at the rapier, and even though he'd had a good duel with Ricard, he thought to himself, it was just a pinprick. And indeed, Ricard had used them like a pincushion and had scored many hits on Conan. There were some treasure chests to loot. A ring and a healing item. Those might come in handy. Conan saw a bridge leading to a tower descending down. Apparently the bridge had been broken by a boulder. Obviously one that was thrown by a giant. These boulders were explosive and very dangerous. Conan made the jump and found another knight.
What? Who are you? Another undead, eh? I took on Sense Fortress alone, but I'm no different from those vile creatures. I was driven by conceit. You think you're different? That you can handle it? Yes, I remember that feeling. For I was the same. So, let me help you out. With your soul searching.
This was the crestfallen merchant. He had come with Black Iron Tarkus
Both on the brink, you see.
and with the Boulder Knights
You bloody fool.
to take on Sense Fortress.
Nothing at all. Fine then.
Apparently his mind was slowly going hollow
Skinned alive.
because he was quite depressed. Especially after he had realized that he didn't have the strength and the skills to make it to the exit of Sense Fortress. He had decided to
What is it?
sarcastically help other warriors who had made it up to this point. He made his livelihood by selling goods and armor.
So you're that good. Don't need a thing.
All heavy
It
and
was
all with
always
good defense,
for mercy.
but nothing that Conan could use. Other than perhaps a moss.
You. Still alive? That's a surprise. Anything you want? What's mine is yours. But at a price. Go along. Try and make something of yourself. But nothing will come of it.
This was another conceited and dismissive knight. He definitely rubbed Conan the wrong way. Conan gave the crestfallen merchant one more try. But the merchant insulted Conan. There was no disrespect in Conan the Barbarian. His temper was short, and he did not suffer fools gladly. The crestfallen merchant's days were over, and it was easy to see why Conan did not like heavy armor, or even a shield. Once his defenses had been pierced, the heavy knight was not quick enough to get away from Conan. In battle, agility, speed, and strength were always better than defense. That was the barbarian way. Conan traveled back to the bonfire, and he thought of his father. It was time to use the only ability that he thought would not be shunned by Chrome. As a blacksmith, his father had taught him about fire and its power. In Blighttown, Conan had found power within. This ability allowed him to channel his internal constitution and give him additional strength. However, it drained one very, very quickly. It acted like a battle rage, and it gave Conan the ability to take on much bigger, much stronger foes. But it was very dangerous because he felt his life draining even as the spell was being used. Conan continued forward and fought a boulder knight with the crossbow. He went up and he confronted the giant that was throwing the explosive boulders. The giants were slow, but they were very, very strong. And they were difficult and dangerous to fight in close quarters. Conan had fought many giants before. Their weak points were always their legs and their heels. There was an alcove next to the chamber that led to the exit of this area. Conan proceeded forth and found the summon sign for the famous hero Black Iron Tarkus. Tarkus had been the only knight that had ever been able to make it all the way through Sans Fortress and onto Anor Londo. He had left the summon sign as a calling card to help other brave warriors who needed help defeating the Iron Golem. But Conan did not. He would be honored to fight with Black Iron Tarkus, but that was for another time and another adventure. Here was a giant that was strongly armored, but the power within incantation and his returning strength allowed him to chop him down. He clipped at the Iron Golem's heels, brought him down, and then finally finished them with great strokes from his claymore. It was good that he hadn't been hit during that fight. He likely would have died because the power within incantation had drained much of his life during the fight in exchange for the extra power. That is the kind of fighting and the kind of spell that Conan liked. A very high risk reward. It pleased the bandit spirit and the fighting spirit within Conan to use that incantation. But his travels to Sen's fortress had also shown Conan that he wasn't ready yet to go to Anor Londo. He had almost found his entire strength, but he was still missing dexterity and agility, and most importantly, his health, his constitution. The man serpents had killed him. He had also failed in his first attempt to cross the bridges, and he had been knocked off by a swinging pendulum. He needed to be more agile. He needed to find a gladiator school, someplace where he could sharpen his fighting skills and regain some of the fighter skills that he had lost on when he came to Lordran. Before going to Anor Londo, he would make sure that he would have more conditioning work at a gladiator school. But where to find one? Well, perhaps he could find a covenant that would allow him to fight others and sharpen his skills. His devotion to Chrome would remain true. But he could swear temporary allegiance to another covenant in order to regain his skills.
Highness, where have you gone?
Chrome would
I am
understand.
entirely to blame for this. Oh, woe is me. I am unworthy.
He decided to travel back to Firelink Shrine and talk with Petrus. Still, not a character that he liked. He comforted himself at a bonfire to regain his strength and recover, for in the next couple of episodes he would find a gladiator school and much fighting would be done.